All right, ready to get started? Okay. Good evening and welcome to the June 22nd, 2021 City Council meeting. Please note that 3 of the council members are present, and myself, and Council Member Nadolski is coming in via electronic, and Luis Lopez and Chair Blair have asked to be excused tonight. I did it.
You did it.
I had to write it down. I always get that wrong. I am so sorry. With that, we have the roll call, and next on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance, and I've asked Councilmember Heyer to please do that.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please take a moment of silence with me. Thank you. Next on our agenda is some approval of minutes. We have the regular meeting of March 2nd, 2021. Councilmember Chaburka.
Yes, Vice Chair. Those are correct.
Thank you. The joint work session of April 13th, 2021. Councilmember Stevens.
Yes, Vice Chair, they're correct.
And the regular meeting of April 20th, 2021. Councilmember Nadolski.
Thank you, Vice Chair. They're accurate, and I make a motion that we pass the minutes as presented.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Nadolski, second by Councilmember Heyer. This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Next on our agenda is 3 common consent items. The first one is the parking violations fee amendments to set the public hearing for July 6th, 2021, a subdivision recording fees setting the public hearing for July 6th, 2021, and the fiscal year 2022 arts grants setting those public hearings.
Vice Chair White, I would make a motion that we approve the common consent agenda by setting the public hearing for all 3 of those items for July 6th.
I second it.
We have a motion by Councilmember Heyer, second by Councilmember Stevens. This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. The next in our agenda, we have a few public hearings. So we have the enterprise fund transfer, and I believe that Glenn Symes from the council office is going to talk to us about that.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Let's see. Let's get that going. Is this thing working? Cool. Let's see. Awesome. Thank you. Okay. Well, thank you very much. As you mentioned, this is the public hearing for the proposed enterprise utility fund transfers. And first, we'll start out with the notification that everyone got. So the state law does require that the city notify all of the users of an enterprise fund if there is a proposed transfer from the enterprise fund to the general fund, if that particular transfer is not directly related to the operation of that enterprise fund. We'll get into that a little bit more in a minute, but just for background, to provide a little bit of information on what an enterprise fund is. Enterprise funds are accounted for separately in the budget, and they're accounted for separately, and the intent is to have them operate with the fees or the fees or the rates that are charged for that service. So as an example would be the water rates for the water utility, or maybe green fees for the golf courses. So the intent, sometimes we say that the enterprise funds act like a business or they run like a business. That's partly true. It's really more accurate to say that we want the fees charged for the services to pay for the operation of that enterprise fund. So we've got 9 enterprise funds in the city, but this transfer applies only to, the water, sanitary sewer, storm sewer, and refuse utilities. So when we talk about the transfer itself, when we look at some of the other utilities like Dominion or Rocky Mountain Power, they do pay the city a franchise tax, and we do receive property tax from those utilities. And our intent is to operate our city utilities as though they were separate entities like those other utilities. And so for that reason, we propose every year a transfer in lieu of the franchise tax and the property tax. So when we look at the impact of that transfer, the amount of money and what that might do to the budget, the proposed transfer, the maximum amount is $5.4 million. And it's important to note that that is the maximum amount that's proposed in the budget. As Lisa will talk about in a minute, the amount of the transfer is calculated based on revenue. So if for some reason we needed to estimate a little bit more conservatively, if those revenues went down, the transfer may not be the full amount that we've included in the notice. So that 5.4 is the maximum amount, but the actual may be less as the year goes on. So when we send out this notice, we usually get a few comments from people that either call or send us a message. And the most often asked question that we get is, if this transfer doesn't happen, would my utility rates go down? And the short answer is yes, but the longer answer is yes, but. And so when we take a look at that amount, that $5.4 million, if that's not made, then we as a city would either have to just eliminate that amount of money from our general fund or try to make it up somewhere else. And the most obvious place that we would try to make that up is with property taxes. And our estimated tax revenue from property taxes for FY22 is $16.4 million. So you can see what a property tax increase would be if we tried to make up another $5.4 million on top of that. One of the things to note when it comes to property taxes is if we were to shift it to that, not every property owner pays property taxes. So other governmental entities, religious institutions, they don't pay property tax. And so comparatively, taxes would actually go up on residences and businesses to make up for the difference for those property owners who don't pay property tax. So one of the ways we think about this is it helps to broaden the base a little bit. So not everybody pays property tax, but everybody still pays a water bill. So it does help to broaden that out and helps to have those other users contribute a little bit with the services that they do provide or do receive. So, and again, as mentioned, if these were other utilities, if these were independent, we would in fact receive revenue in the form of franchise tax and property tax. So the public hearing itself, as part of that state law that requires the notice, we're also required to hold a public hearing. And there's no specific action that's required with this public hearing on the agenda item. So it's one of the rare cases where you all would hold a public hearing, but you don't take a specific action on this agenda item. These transfers are included in the budget, which is where the council would approve the transfers. And that, of course, has its own hearing and its own agenda item that we'll discuss here in a few minutes. So, and also as required, we will send a follow-up notice once the council does approve the budget, letting people know, again, what that maximum amount of transfer could be based on the approved budget. So with that, I will turn it over to Lisa to talk about some of the accounting data that we're also required to talk about.
Thank you, Glenn. I appreciate Glenn's presentation. He did a good job of explaining that and kind of the philosophy behind the transfers. The information in front of you is budget estimates for each of the utility funds that are transferring money to the general fund. And we've taken that transfer and divided it into a franchise tax in lieu of portion and a property tax in lieu of portion. The expenditure budget includes all expenditures, including operating and capital improvement and debt service. So those are our big budget numbers. In the water, it ends up being about 10% of the expenditure budget that is being transferred to the general fund, or about $2.6 million. In the sanitary sewer, it is just under 12%, or approximately $1.4 million. In the storm sewer, it's about $627,000 and just under 12%. And in the refuse fund, again, it's just under 12% and about $37,000, excuse me. Those percentages compared to last year are very similar. And again, these are based off the revenue estimates. We work with LYRB to look at the sustainability of these funds each year, and so they help us with those revenue projections as well. And then after the year is done and we were all reconciled with our books, we do a look back and make sure we haven't transferred more than the 6% for franchise and 6% for property out of those utilities based on their revenues. Thank you.
Before you go, Lisa,
Yes.
years ago, it was about 17%. What happened to get it down to 12?
So we still do move 17%. However, the other 5% is an administrative fee. So what we do
So
is
it just doesn't fit in this bucket.
exactly.
I see. Thank you.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Yep.
So the 6%, is that a number that we set, or is the state set, or who sets
No.
that?
The city was smart in the way they did this, in my opinion. Years ago, they set this model where they would transfer a fixed percent. Many cities were using utility funds to just balance their budget, and it was just sort of done to balance their budget. The city said, let's look at this as a fee in lieu of tax transfer, and so they set these percents years and years ago.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. We just needed to receive public input, so. Anybody want to input on this? Seeing no movement, I will just go ahead and close the public input period, and we don't have to vote
This is
on it.
actually one you need a motion for.
Oh, you do?
You do. It's a
Vice
public
Chair,
hearing.
I apologize. Do we want to explain how you'd participate electronically if you'd like to?
Oh, yes.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Sure thing. I just noticed there were some attendees. I couldn't
Yep,
see
thank
them
you.
before. Yeah.
Check 1, 2. Thank you. Yes. To participate in this public hearing, you must be here in the chambers in person or joining us via Zoom. And if you are joining us via Zoom, you can participate by using the raise hand feature, which is found at the bottom of the application.
There's one phone number.
And if you're joining us via telephone and would like to participate in the hearing, you would press *9 to raise your hand.
Well, Vice Chair White, since I see no hands being raised, I'm going to make a motion to close the public hearing on this item.
I second it.
We have a motion by Councilmember Heyer, second by, I'll do Councilmember Chaburka to close the public hearing. This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Any opposed? I guess I didn't hear Councilmember Nadolski. We don't have any action to take on this, so is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. All right, next up on the agenda is our City Utilities Consumer Price Index CPI calculation amendments. I guess
We need to save Lisa a seat closer.
I know.
Thank you, council members. The ordinance before you is, did you get my presentation? Okay.
When did you send it? Was it the same one that you used?
4:30, about 4:30. 5. Sorry.
Oh, 50%.
Yeah, I'll just start discussing what the ordinance contains. So the city has set utility rates, and in that rate ordinance, I believe the last time it was updated was 2012, the council authorized a consumer price index increase every year. The proposal tonight would change that ordinance, that code, to allow for a blended CPI. So we looked at all of the utility funds, knowing that water is the biggest. And so whatever we did would have the biggest impact on the water fund, and decided that construction is increasing faster than operation costs right now. So it would be wise to look at the percent of the budget that's put into construction versus the percent that is operating and maintenance, and do a blended or a weighted rate based on using both an operating CPI and a construction CPI. So the ordinance proposes using 67% for operating and maintenance and 33% for construction for a CPI increase. And with that weighted rate, that's based on what the water utility operating and maintenance and capital improvement budget looks like. So with the rated rate, that calculates to 1.8% this year. And we're calling that a blended inflation adjustment. So each year we would go out and look at the January Western Region CPI and the January American City and Counties CCI, which is the construction cost index. And using that weighted calculation, we would propose, well, it would be included in the ordinance, so we would be authorized to increase the water utility rates, the storm sewer rates, and the sanitary sewer rates by that blended adjustment index. And then we are proposing leaving the refuse utility as is, because there's really no construction going on in the refuse utility fund. So that would be based on just the Western Region CPI. The other change in this ordinance is to change the number of gallons that are calculated if the city is in a severe drought condition. So that's a declaration from the mayor. Currently, the ordinance reads for 1 inch meter or less, if we're in a severe drought, anything above 10,000 gallons will be billed at that higher rate, which is a 20% increase. Our utility billing system has a cutoff of 6,000 gallons. That's how it's set up. So we're asking to align the ordinance with our billing system to allow for easier calculation if the city goes into the severe drought conditions. And those are the two changes in this ordinance. So the request tonight is for council to adopt ordinance 2021-31 to adjust the municipal code to address annual inflation adjustment and to reduce the minimum number of gallons per month threshold to increase rates when severe drought conditions are declared. Thank you.
Are there any questions?
I still have my concern that remains that the change in the billing from 10,000 to 6 really only affects 55% of our citizens. I wanted to know if we've done anything to figure out how to equalize that somehow.
I also in fact, it didn't occur to me until today when I found out that Pineview may be shutting off their water
in August.
Yeah.
and perhaps sooner, that then it will actually adversely affect those even more that are on secondary. Because,
you're right.
so I'm not sure that that those that are hitting up against,
I'm
that
not
many
sure
gallons
there's a
of water.
great solution, and I don't have a remedy to propose. It just does kind of rub you wrong.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's challenging for the city to do anything when we're subject to the decision of others. So, you talk about equalizing rates. And at this point in time, unless we go look at the whole rate structure and revise how it's put together, this would not, what we're proposing here would absolutely not address your concern.
Right.
It would take a completely different rate structure to address that.
That sounds like a discussion for a water rate study that we're well overdue in. I think it's time we better get on that and have that done.
Thank you. Thank you for that direction.
Yeah, I would think that we'd put in the notes that needs to be looked at. So the mayor has the right to declare severe drought. When does he have to make that declaration?
We can do that, and we've been working with the governor's office, and we have a kitchen cabinet with the governor's administrative staff. We've been meeting weekly with that and the Utah League of Cities and Towns. So, yeah, we've been very, very involved in those conversations, and we're working on that. Part of what we have to deal with is what we legally can do, that the state legislature gives us the opportunity to do, and part of what we don't as a municipality. And so that's, I'm sure it's going to come up in public comments, but the firework restrictions and a lot of other things, we have things we can do legally, and we have things that we cannot do legally, and we don't want to be sued and have a bunch of other issues that come up. So we're very, very involved in that, and you've got one of the best water rights attorneys sitting to your right over there giving us direction on where we need to go and what we can and what we can't do. So we've appreciated that.
So, Mayor, would you make it a public comment in our council meetings, or would you do it publicly, or how is that given out?
A public notice about be very, very safe with fireworks and how you water and everything else. I'll make that comment right now. Absolutely. Okay. We all need to be doing that. And I'll tell you just on a personal level, my lawn is as dry as it gets. And my wife comments about that a little bit, saying, we could probably do a little more, but we probably shouldn't be doing a little bit more. And I agree. And I think everybody needs to look at this year as an exceptional year. And what was it that Governor Cox said? Yellow grass is...
Yellow lawns great again.
Yeah, make yellow lawns great again. And I have that. I totally lead out with that, and I agree with it. And it's something we've got to be very cognizant of this year.
Okay.
Mayor, Mark Stratford could probably give a little more information on when we would declare the next the level that of drought that's being talked about in this ordinance.
Yeah, I do think actually for some context, it's important to understand something. So the particular ordinance you're talking about tonight, dealing with a potential increase in rate in a severe drought, that was adopted, I don't know how long ago, long time ago, that the mayor was given that authority. It wasn't until more recently that we adopted the water shortage management plan that you talked about or heard about last week. And so interestingly enough, one does not necessarily trigger the other. So the water shortage management plan might go from moderate to extreme to severe, but it still may not necessarily result in, there's no automatic consequence to rates. And the ordinance for rates is structured slightly differently. And so really there's nothing that says on this particular date you shall increase rates. It's really just something that the administration, is, as the mayor has already said, is going to be monitored. And if it's determined that that needs to happen, then there would be a public announcement at that point. But they're independent. And so the water shortage management plan could call for greater restrictions without necessarily automatically resulting in a 20% rate increase, because that is a pretty significant method of trying to address the problems that might be out there. And so you just need to understand those are two separate processes, even though they both talk about drought and water shortages.
Well, I've just had kind of a comment about it. I guess I really think, from talking to some neighbors and things this week, people are not getting it. They don't get that we're in the situation that we are. If you look at the maps where the whole of Utah is that giant red blob, compared to last year. So to me, I know it's extreme, this rate increase, but if we get to a severe drought, then people will have to stop watering. And one of the ways to get them to do that is to raise the water rate. Some people are just not getting it. So maybe we need to get the word out more. We're on our way to this. We're definitely going to hit this at some point this summer, and your water will get shut off if you have secondary. But we're paying culinary prices right now all around, downtown, and hopefully people will just stop watering because it's so cheap. The water is super cheap. So it's a situation that's really untenable if people continue to behave the way they do now.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm not sure that the rate increase we're talking about here even gets that done, though. It's
a little too late, honestly.
Because I think the maximum impact it was going to have on anybody was $2.38. Isn't that what it was? Something like that. Pretty minor.
Councilmember Heyer, if I could clarify one thing about that $2 rate. The $2 is only what would happen between 6,000 and 10,000 gallons. If you're using more than 10,000 gallons, you're still going to be, if this were invoked, you're still going to be paying 20% more. So your bill is going to be way, way more. It's just that this would only add $2 to the bill if you were in that particular category. So the 20% is still significant, but the change in the ordinance is minor.
That was my point.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and you're understanding my point of.
Oh, I do.
I'm
not saying this is an easy.
We'll end up paying a culinary price that's more.
Yeah.
There are some consequences because it's going to rain on Thursday, so we'll be all right there.
With lightning.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
It's not going to rain it up.
Yeah. Enough to be an annoyance. Any other questions? All right. This is a public hearing as well. So.
If you'd like to participate in this public hearing, you must be joining us here in the chambers or via Zoom, and you can use the raise hand feature found at the bottom of the application to let Vice Chair White know that you would like to participate. And if you're joining us via telephone in Zoom, you can use *9 to raise your hand. Thank you.
Heath Sato, Ogden resident. I want to completely back up what Angela's saying about, I'm sorry, Chairperson Shabrika.
Council member.
Council member. I'm getting it all messed up. This is why I normally write things down. I just want to support what you said. It's got to hurt a little bit, or people aren't going to get it. My lawn's currently getting crispy. I left it as long as I could to keep the roots moist, and I'm out in the industrial area for my shop, where we're still in the Ogden limits, and I've been working nights because it's just really hot in the shop. So I've been working late, and everyone is legally watering between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m., but all the lawns out there, and this is an industrial area, all the lawns out there look like golf courses. I mean, they're beautiful, and they're watering like mad every night. The gutters are filled with water, and there's nothing we can do or say about it because they can, the way the rules currently exist. So yeah, I'm all for anything that ups it in a drought situation. Thanks.
Thank you. We do have a hand raised. It's a 258, or last three digits are 258. Go ahead.
Yes, I guess I would agree with the other comments that it sure seems to me that I'd really recommend taking action and get these prices up. People talk about what we can and can't do legally. The fireworks scenario, every July 4th we get to listen to fireworks. July 5th we get to hear all the reports of all the fires. And I saw where the fire chief said 20 million gallons. I might have the numbers wrong. 20 million gallons a day. We use 4 million gallons on a 40-acre fire. It's a lot of waste. And I know there's other mitigating circumstances, but the way this conversation sounds to me, it sounds like there's almost this feeling that we'll be out of this after this year. And I think as we sit here today, I'd be declaring severe drought because we aren't certain of what our snowpack's going to be this next year. And so I would encourage very much, start taking action as opposed to hesitation. I'd recommend going with the pricing. I'd recommend going with the severe. I'd recommend, doing as best we can. And if we're going to get sued, hey, get sued, for heaven's sakes. That's why you have your attorneys. But it just seems to me that people aren't getting it. The gentleman was talking about the lawns being green. We've got a guy out here that he waters every night, and he starts at 5:30. So, I think we're kidding ourselves if we think people are going to act. We need to start charging. We need to make sure people pay a price, and that's going to get conservation. Thanks a lot.
Can you state your name for the record, please?
My name is Marty Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Walker.
Vice Chair White, seeing no more hands, I would make a motion we close the public hearing on this item.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Heyer, second by Councilmember Chaburka to close the public hearing. This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
And a motion?
Vice Chair, I'll make a motion to adopt proposed ordinance 2021-31.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Councilmember Chaburka, second by Councilmember Heyer to adopt ordinance 2021-31. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Chaburka.
Aye.
Councilmember Heyer.
Aye.
Councilmember Nadolski.
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens.
Aye.
Acting Chair White.
Aye. That passes. All right. Next on the agenda is the fiscal year 2022 to 2026 capital improvement plan, not to be confused with the CPI. Jeez, we should have given some space between those two.
Yeah, we've got a lot of those. Trying to put these agendas together has been interesting. CIPs and CPIs and well, thank you. So this is your consideration of the FY22 to 26 capital improvement plan. Let's see. Hey, all right. So I'll try to go through some of this background information fairly quickly, as I think most council members are pretty familiar with the capital improvement plan and what it is. So just to quickly mention that the CIP does fit within your strategic directives, and particularly the city image and reputation directive and budget goal. And just a quick background on what a capital improvement project is. Anything that's over $50,000 that adds to the city's physical plant. This can include design and construction. This can also include rehabilitation and reconstruction for anything in that physical plant. And obviously, the physical plant is any physical infrastructure that we have, city buildings, streets, utility lines, parks, other public facilities. A CIP project can also result in the acquisition of the long-term lease of land, and can also be some feasibility studies, which will lead to CIP projects in the future. So some of the main funding sources we have for the CIP include the general fund, which includes the BDO lease revenue, federal and state grants, which we see a lot with the airport, for example, B&C road funds and active transportation funds, sometimes referred to as Prop 1 funds, enterprise funds. As we talked about a little bit ago, the enterprise funds are generally sort of self-contained, and so those oftentimes will pay for their own projects, either through revenues or through bonds. And then there are other funding sources like RAMP and some other partnerships and possibly RDA funds. So earlier this year, there were some pretty significant changes to the CIP ordinance. So I'd just like to go over those a little bit. So the biggest change really was the change in timing. The way the ordinance was written before, the CIP would be submitted to the Planning Commission November 1st rather than March 1st, which is how it is now with these ordinance changes. The 45-day requirement still is in effect. However, going from March 1st put the CIP going to the council mid-December, as opposed to now with these recent changes coming to the council mid-April. So the project amount was changed from $30,000 to $50,000 just because of increase in costs. And it does separate projects into one of three types, which is a new feature. It's an interesting way to look at it. One-time projects, perpetual or ongoing projects, and then the RAMP projects. These changes also provide some clarification for the Planning Commission's role, and it did allow budgetary changes and some minor amendments that don't change the scope to forego that Planning Commission review and come straight to the council. That does help with the timing on some of those amendments. Yes, sir. It really just clarified that their role is to make sure that projects are in compliance with the general plan. So their role is not to look at budgetary issues, for example. That's something that is the council's role, which is why that exception exists. If it's budgetary in nature, if it's just a change in the amount of money for a project, that's not something that's going to be consistent or not consistent with the general plan. And so that wouldn't need to go to the Planning Commission. And so that just clarifies that the Planning Commission's role is compliance with the general plan. And then that last point, it does remove the critical contingency project as a project. It doesn't remove the funding, but it's no longer a CIP project the way it was before with its own number. So as I mentioned with the schedule change, that changed the way that we review the CIP. This is the first year we've done it this new way. The intent is to have the council review the CIP along with the budget, which we've done over the last 6 weeks or so. And this was really to allow a better alignment with the first year of funding in the 5-year CIP plan and the funding in the budget. Because it's obviously we can only line up the first year of the 5-year plan with the budget. The other 4 years still stand as a longer term planning document. So it still serves that purpose as a long term planning document, but we can line up that first year a little bit better. So as we went through, as you all went through the work sessions over the last month and a half, the CIP projects were included with the department's budgets, and those were reviewed along with those directors and their proposed budgets. And then the proposal would be to adopt the CIP tonight along with your annual budget. So this is just a quick schedule review of when those work sessions took place and how we got from the first part of May to today. So if we dive into the actual proposal, the FY22 to 26 capital improvement plan, It was reviewed by the Planning Commission. They had a chance to take a look at it at their April 7th meeting. They did forward a recommendation of approval with a vote of 5-0. The one project, the GC001, was actually submitted after the full plan was submitted to the Planning Commission. That one kind of came after. They did get a chance to take a look at that with the full plan. That was included in their recommendation. And this one actually was part of some of the early funding for FY21. So that one came a little bit late, got funded a little bit early. And we'll touch on some of those changes here in a minute. So if we look at some of the numbers in the plan, there are 67 total projects proposed in the 5-year plan. Of those, 30 of them are new projects to the plan this year. 10 of the other projects had what we consider to be significant changes, greater than 20% in the budget included with the project. And then the total funding for everything in the plan for all departments and all years is $205.6 million. So this new category that I mentioned, the one thing you'll notice there with the perpetual or the ongoing projects, the number of projects is only about a third of the projects, but they make up 3/4 of the budget. So you can see there are fewer projects, but those ongoing projects are the ones that we pay for. The one-time projects, a little over half of the projects are the one-time projects, but it's less than a quarter of the funding in the proposed CIP. And then the ramp projects, there are 9 projects included in the 22 to 26 CIP. Again, we'll mention this in a minute, but many of those projects were funded in this fiscal year with some of the amendments that you all approved a couple of weeks ago. So when we take a look at the departments, so these are all the general fund departments and their FY22 funding proposed. This is what's included in the plan, not in the budget. So in the plan, there's just under $18 million proposed for general fund departments in the CIP, another $135 million for future funding, $153.2 million proposed for general fund funding in the CIP. If we jump over to the enterprise funds, about $11.5 million for those in FY22, another $40.8 million for future funding, and $52.3 for total projects for enterprise funds. The one thing I will point out there, you can see the sanitary sewer, the storm sewer, and the water utility. In FY22, there's not a lot of money proposed for projects. That doesn't mean that there aren't projects happening. In FY22, a lot of the projects will still be funded with bond proceeds. So you can see in future funding, there will still be more projects, but most of the projects for FY22 will still be funded from the bond proceeds. So for everything for FY22 is $29.4 million. That's in the plan. Again, not in the budget, but proposed in the plan. And then that $205.6 million for everything. So we stick a pin in that $29.4 million for just a second when we put the two side by side. So this was kind of the point of having the CIP be reviewed along with the budget so we could see how those would line up. So we can see the FY22 funding in the CIP is the 29.4. In the FY22 budget, it's just about $19.5 million. So there's a pretty significant difference there. But when we jump down to those amendments that the council approved a couple of weeks ago, there were 15 projects. 8 of those needed an amendment to the FY21 to 25 CIP, which is the current fiscal year plan. There were $5.8 million. There was $5.8 million funded early. That most of that, had those amendments not taken place, would have been funded in FY22. So it's a bit more accurate to put those two numbers together, the 19.5 and the 5.8. If we put those two numbers together, it's just under $25.4 million. So there's a difference with the CIP and the budget if we include those recent amendments of just about $4 million. So that's a little bit closer than that $10 million that is shown on there. So the next step would be for you all to hold the public hearing and then adopt the budget. If you have any questions for me, I would be happy to answer anything that I could.
Any questions?
I just have a comment. I really appreciate that last slide. Thank you.
Yep.
Among all the other great work.
I just have a quick question. You know, we changed it around this year.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like that process worked, or?
we're going to have a debrief as staff in I don't know, a week or so, and I think we'll talk about ways that we can do it better. Anytime you go through something the first time, there's always ways when you look back that you feel like you could do it better. I do like that we can see what's proposed in the plan and what's actually funded side by side. That makes it a little bit easier. Before, we understood the point of doing it the other way. Also, it was a guiding document. It was approved. That would inform what's being funded with the budget as the mayor presented the budget to the council. But there are advantages this way too. So I think we can improve on how we incorporate the review of the CIP into the budget review as we go forward. But I think for now we see some improvements, but we want to stick with the way it is and see if we can do it a little bit better as we go forward.
Along with the budget is what you're saying. Yeah. Great. Any more questions? This too is a public hearing, so if there's anybody that would like to participate, I will turn the time over to you, Brandon, to tell people how to get on. It seems like there's the same people, but
Yeah, in case there's anyone new joining us to participate in this public hearing, if you're not in chambers and you're joining us via Zoom, you can use the raise hand feature found at the bottom of the application, and that will notify Chair White, and she will call on you, and we ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes.
doesn't look like anyone.
Vice Chair White, I'll make a motion that we close the public hearing on this item.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Heyer, second by Councilmember Stevens to close the public hearing. This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
And with that, I need a motion. Well, any opposed?
I make a motion that we adopt proposed ordinance 2021-28.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Stevens, second by Councilmember Heyer to adopt proposed ordinance 2021-28. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Heyer.
Aye.
Councilmember Nadolski.
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens.
Aye.
Councilmember Chaburka.
Aye.
Acting Chair White.
Aye, that passes. Thank you. Next on our agenda is the salary schedules and Janine Eller-Smith.
Thank you, Acting Chair White and council members, for the opportunity to talk to you, present the final salary schedules. Let's see. All right. As we have talked before, there are 4 salary schedules, one for non-merit, special. Those are most of the all of the elected officials, all of the managerial positions, council and mayor staff, and the judges and attorneys. There's merit. Those are all of the other non-sworn employees, and then police and fire sworn. As I mentioned, the salary schedules include the elected officials, and we've had some discussions about that. And it's want to make it clear that these are the salaries that are included in the salary schedule for F122. So, those are the amounts that are set in per your discussion. You are not, as council members, at benchmark, which is what you established as what you'd like to set elected official salaries at. And so we're going to leave you just increase the 4% as of July 1, and then as of January 1, we will move you to the benchmark that's set there. It's important to note that in a later action tonight on the elected official salary ordinance amendments, those are required in order to sort of put these in place, because going by the benchmark doesn't exactly align with the ordinances, and which is why we're recommending the changes. Other related information in the salary schedules relate to the COLA and merit increases. As you know, we're implementing the new salary schedules from the Evergreen Classification Study, Compensation Study. So there'll be a minimum of 4% for all employees, and that's effective July 1 or on the service date for public safety. There's an increase in health insurance costs as the city moves to a self-insured model. But the city will be picking up those costs, so there's no increases to the employees. There's no increases to retirement. On the staffing document, this is the document that outlines every position in the city, where they are and how many there are in that position. We've discussed that they are moving a code services collector to Treasury, and also renaming a purchasing technician to collection technician. And that is so they can consolidate those collection services under the Treasury Department. There were new positions proposed by the administration for CED in the accounting department, in IT, 2 positions there, which are actually budget neutral, and fleet and facilities maintenance technician. At your request, we also added 2 additional positions to the staffing document and the budget. 2 positions in public services in the engineering division for a principal engineer and a construction inspector. And I don't know why the numbers aren't showing up there, but that adds about $298,000 to the general fund and for those additional positions. So with that, I don't have, unless you have any other questions.
How important, Janine, how important is the benchmarking? What does that do for us?
So the benchmarking basically takes an average of all of the elected officials. So HR did it for the mayor's salary. I also did it for the council members' salaries.
Okay.
And so it's really just an average. So we as a council staff have talked about maybe there are other things that should be considered in setting a benchmark or a range or a salary position, salary place, other than just what other people are paying. Mm-hmm. And so as part of our agreement and our discussion with you, the council staff will be looking for a consultant to do an additional work on that benchmark and evaluate where the mayor and council members are to see if that's really the right place. You know, there might be other factors, size of city or age of city or those kinds of things that might make it, more difficult to govern one city over another.
I didn't see the police and the fire. Did you was that going to be presented today?
So I didn't go over their schedules in that presentation, but they are in your packet.
Okay.
And again, it's the new ranges proposed by Evergreen in that compensation study.
Okay.
Other questions? Thank you.
This is also a public hearing. Anyone wishing to address the council? I should know this by now, but I don't. Go for it, Brandon.
If you're joining us via Zoom and you want to participate in this public hearing, you can do so by using the raise hand feature at the bottom of the application. And again, if you're joining us with via telephone, the key combination is *9 to raise your hand.
Doesn't look like there's any movement.
Acting Chair White, I will make a motion to close the public hearing on item 5B.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Heyer, second by Councilmember Chaburka to close the public hearing. This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye. You gonna ask any opposed?
Oh, any opposed? Since I heard all ayes, I figured
Okay,
that.
yeah, that's probably fair.
Yeah.
Acting Chair White, I would make a motion then that we adopt ordinance 2021-29, adopting the salary schedule.
I second it.
We have a motion by Councilmember Heyer, second by Councilmember Stevens to adopt the proposed ordinance 2021-29. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Nadolski,
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens,
Aye.
Councilmember Chaburka,
Aye.
Councilmember Heyer,
Aye.
Acting Chair White.
Aye, that passes.
May I make a quick comment?
Yes.
I just wanted to say how much I appreciate you, Vice Chair White, for requesting us also look at the gender disparities or potential in the salary schedule. So I look forward to discussing that together. Thank you.
Yeah. More to come on that.
I think it's good that future council is going to look at consultant to look at our benchmarking to make sure that we're within line and that it is providing the right information and the correct information for us. It'll be a barometer by which we can look at and judge in that capacity.
Thanks. Councilmember Nadolski, any comments?
None this time. Thank you.
Great. All right. With that, we'll move on to the fiscal year 2021-2022 budget. Janine Eller-Smith.
Thank you, Vice Chair White. Thought since I'd presented this a few times, I thought maybe I'd mix it up a little bit and kind of give you sort of a budget 101. Just kind of back to basics and why the budget is so important to the city and why Ogden residents should care about it. First of all, the budget is the primary policy document of the city. So it's a statement of all the priorities that you do. It includes all of the strategic directives or initiatives that are outlined in the strategic plan. It translates those policies into actions or helps it. So the things that you set as policies give direction to the mayor and his administration, and they have the funding and the ability to implement those policies that you've established. It's also a control tool because it gives legal authority to the administration for their day-to-day activities. It sets spending limits, and you have fiscal oversight through the auditing process and other ways, and it also sets accountability, trust, and transparency. So it's really important document to you as a council, to the mayor and his administration, and to the residents of Ogden. It's a management tool, so it essentially sets out the spending plan, how much the administration can spend, and it identifies how much services cost, or at least estimates how much they would cost. And it's also a way to establish sort of long-term fiscal sustainability. One thing that you do with the budget document that I thought I should mention is that you're also adopting the certified tax rate. And, I have a spiel that I normally do when you're doing a tax increase. And so I won't go into that. But basically, the certified tax rate is designed for revenue neutrality. That means the city can get as much property tax revenue this year as it did last year. And then they add property tax values for any new growth on top of that. So Ogden's rate for 2020, you can see the number there. And the rate for 2021 will be something lower, 002397. And that's really important. And I love to show this chart, Ogden city tax rate history. this is for 20 years, and you can see that that tax rate history has gone down for the most part significantly over the last 20 years. I actually went back another 10 years. I have information back 10 years. So in 30 years, the current tax rate is actually half of what it was 30 years ago. So all of that, can impact as we're losing, revenue when that happens. And the only way to claim that additional revenue is through a tax or property tax increase. By your fiscal properties that you've set forth, you decided that you wanted to look at a tax increase every other year. This wasn't the year. Next year will be the year when you may want to consider a tax increase, and it's possible that if the mayor wants to propose one, that's an option for you to consider. Just to review the final budget, the priority for this budget was really the employee compensation plan. There's almost $6 million that it cost to bring employees' salaries up to where they would be in line with other agencies and other jurisdictions, so that hopefully we can stop losing a lot of the good employees to other municipalities. It did replace a lot of line items that were eliminated in 2021 because of COVID. There's some fleet replacement. There's a new fire truck that's pretty pricey. Moving to that self-insurance model, there's increases there. And then a lot of funding in the CIP process, as you just heard from Glenn. I reviewed the increased positions or new positions with the salary schedules. Here's where the budget impact was. I thought it was in the other one. $298,000 in the general fund, $68,000 increase in fleet facilities. That's to cover equipment for those two new positions, and $6,000 for IT. It's the same equipment for those new positions. Here's the year-over-year revenue comparisons. This does include the new positions that you requested be added to the FY22 budget. So total proposed general fund revenues and expenditures is $67.5 million. That's an increase of almost 12% over last year. But as you remember, last year was a very unique year and very conservative year as the budget went. Here's a few other, when comparing all of the major funds, and which also includes the Schedule A changes. And you can see the total proposed budget for all of the funds is $215 million. Council budget goals. I've reviewed these. There's several of those strategic initiatives that are projects that are met in this budget, and we feel like we're really making progress on that strategic plan. And here's the process. It's been a couple of months. We're here at the end, as you can see, and so the recommendation from the staff is that you adopt Ordinance 2021-30 for the fiscal year FY21-22 budget. All of the budget documents are electronic and be found on the city website there, as it's shown. And you can also, once all of it's finalized, it usually takes a few weeks for all of the documents to get kind of sorted and put together. Those will be uploaded as soon as they're done.
Any questions?
We've had hundreds. I think we've probably had enough. Thanks, Janine.
So I just have a really quick question. Sorry. So the $5 million that we had, whatever that we moved from the CIP from next year to this year, is it get replaced then? Is that
so? Those are changes that are in the Schedule A1.
Okay.
So those are accounted for there, right, Lisa? Maybe not? So the changes that we made with the CIP when we funded those additional projects in that from FY20 that were scheduled in FY22 that we funded in FY21.
They're not in the one. Okay.
The line where it says sales tax that we collect was up 37%. So it does pay to buy in Ogden. So
and it pays to get Amazon tax too, I think.
Yeah,
that certainly helped.
Not that I've had one of those at my delivery door in the last number of months.
400 days or something. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. This is a public hearing, a chance for anyone to have input on the budget. There's a way to do it, and Brandon will tell us how, even though there's the same people on.
To participate in this public hearing regarding the final budget, you can use the raise hand feature found in the bottom of the Zoom application. And if you're joining us via telephone on Zoom, you can use *9 to raise your hand. Thank you.
Doesn't look like any hands are getting raised.
No, I think we should have thrown some animals in this
I know,
budget
right?
somehow. But Vice Chair White, I would make a motion that we close the public hearing on item 5E, 5 Echo.
I have a motion by Councilmember Heyer, second by Councilmember Chaburka to close the public hearing. This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And with that, we need a motion.
I'll make a motion that we adopt proposed ordinance 2021-30.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Stevens and second by Councilmember Heyer to adopt fiscal year 2021 to 2022 budget, proposed ordinance 2021-30. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Stevens.
Aye.
Councilmember Chaburka.
Aye.
Councilmember Heyer.
Aye.
Councilmember Nadolski.
Aye.
Acting Chair White.
Aye, that passes. And great job again. Thank you, you guys. Next on our agenda is new business. Elected official salary ordinance amendments. Janine Eller-Smith, take it home.
Acting Chair White, I wonder if you might indulge me and let me ask Councilmember Stevens a question.
Okay.
Yes.
I just wanted to know how it feels to pass your 16th and last budget.
Great. It's like New Year's Day and New Year's Eve.
You saw how eager he was to make the motion.
Yeah, you're Johnny on the spot.
We have to mention that I recall the process when I came onto the council and the process that we have today, and it's like light years improvement, even though we still need to improve on the process. But we have to take hats off to not only our staff, but also the administration and also council members, because we have to sit through this item of the budget, and we all need to put in resources and comments and ideas. And that's how we get to this point in this time. But there's a lot of teamwork that is being developed here to develop this. But it's like New Year's Eve, I can tell you that, without the fireworks. So,
Thanks for letting me do that, Vice Chair White.
16th in it.
So we just want to talk about, these are salary ordinance amendments for elected officials. So there's two, one for the mayor and one for the council. And they essentially make the same changes for each one. allows for just cost of living adjustments as approved by the council. So in other words, no merit increases are allowed under the new changes. The salary is determined by total compensation benchmark study, and for both the mayor and the council, and basically leaves all of the other benefits that are there in place. So I did hand out to you before the meeting a substitute ordinance for the council members. So this will be substitute for ordinance number 2021-35. It just makes very minor changes. I noticed that as going through that there was some inconsistencies in whether it was in the plurals. So sometimes it was council members' salaries and sometimes was a council member's salary. And so I just asked legal to make that consistent through the ordinance. And so that's the only change in the substitute ordinance. So this, again, is the elected official salaries at your direction. So the mayor will remain at $133,766, and then council members will be at $19,566, and then adding the 6 and the 12% for vice and chair per the existing ordinance. And then in January 1, we'll increase you to the benchmark of 22.5 for regular council members. So unless you have any other questions, I would, staff's recommendation is to adopt proposed ordinance 2021-34 as is, and to adopt substitute ordinance 2021-35.
Okay. Any questions? Any questions?
I think it might be, I'd like to make a comment, I think, if that's okay.
Sure.
I think it's always difficult when you're talking about your own salary. And we wrestle with this from time to time. This year was no exception. And it made me feel much more comfortable to put it in someone else's court, somebody that does benchmarking, those kind of things. Makes me feel a lot better about it. That way I don't have to figure out what it should be or justify it in any way. It's already been done by the people that we put in place. I think it's gonna be a cleaner process going forward, and I really like it. And whoever proposed it, you're a genius. So
We know that.
Yep.
I agree, and it becomes a much more transparent process, too.
It does.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Jenny.
You ready for motion?
Yes, sir.
I would make a motion then that we adopt ordinance 2021-34.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Heyer, second by Councilmember Stevens to adopt proposed ordinance 2021-34. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Chaburka.
Aye.
Councilmember Heyer.
Aye.
Councilmember Nadolski.
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens.
Aye.
Acting Chair White.
Aye. That passes.
Vice Chair White, I would make a motion that we adopt substitute ordinance 2021-35.
I need a second.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Heyer, second by Councilmember Chaburka to adopt proposed ordinance 2021-34, the substitute of that.
35.
35. This is also a roll call vote.
Councilmember Heyer.
Aye.
Councilmember Nadolski.
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens.
Aye.
Councilmember Chaburka.
Aye.
Acting Chair White.
Aye. That passes. Thank you for your hard work.
Kind of feels like a celebration is in order or something here.
Yay!
That was a lot of public.
Good job, you guys.
Thanks, finance people. You guys did great this year.
Next on our agenda is public comment. This is an opportunity to address the council regarding any concerns or ideas or on any topic. Please feel free to come up and state your name, and you have your 3 minutes. And it looks like we have a few online as well. So,
Do you want to do this first? Or?
yeah, sure.
Okay. Speaking of better processes for more transparency.
Oh, your name first. We know you are.
Heath Sato, Ogden resident. But speaking of those processes, as I briefly mentioned last week, I spent hours speaking with Brandon Cooper about the Brown Ice Cream building development and other development issues. It was made very clear to me why the administration resisted answering the questions I had for 3 months. What I learned is that this scenario does not break any existing rules. A person in the administration picks a broker of their choice. This broker apparently has some sort of business relationship with a developer. That broker was able to completely undervalue the building and only tell that one developer about this opportunity because the city chose to not sign any contracts with the broker. And that signing a contract with a broker would legally require the broker to accurately evaluate the building or risk losing their license. So this seems intentional. Now, the RDA, supposedly representing the best interests of the city and its people, was given information they based their decision on by a broker that was not only working in that was only working in the developer's best interests. In other words, there's no effort being made to represent us, the city of Ogden, the people of Ogden at that point. That broker was working to estimate the value of the building as low as they felt they could get away with without putting up any red flags to the RDA. And short, oversimplified version is that the current rules completely allow a buddy of a buddy to avoid any competition to develop a property and basically gets like a $250,000 gift because there's a buddy network and no rules against any of this as it currently stands. In any other scenario, I think you would all agree this is not quite right. For everyone that hates bureaucracy, this is why bureaucracy exists. Because we can't just assume everyone is working in the best interests of the city. So I do greatly appreciate Brandon taking the time to explain what is allowed by the current system, and probably unintentionally increased my concerns about this deal and other development deals in the city. Since the RDA approved the original deal, which I'm told expired for the Brown Ice Cream building, by being presented a false valuation and false information about how the building was marketed, I suggest the city actually signs a contract with a different broker to get a real, accurate valuation on the building and have it properly marketed to qualified developers. I'm sure by doing this, the city will get offers that will either give the RDA more money for the property with just as good results, money that can be fed into future projects, just 1 second, or a more inspired vision for the building. So I'm glad to hear some of you are currently working on changing the system so there's more transparency and accountability in the future. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands raised, but, and I don't see any new people, so I hope. All right, with that, comments from the mayor.
Sure, I have a couple quick ones. We had meetings with the Weber County or the water boards and everything else, and this is an exceptional year for us, and I want to encourage everybody to do what they can. As we said earlier, yellow's in and yellow's cool. I've got that going on with my lawn, but we want to encourage everybody to be very selective about their fireworks and what happens here. I wanted to assure all of you that we have done everything legally possible. The state legislature sets the legal limits on what we can and what we can't do in terms of fire restrictions and firework restrictions. And we've done everything we possibly can to get us as safe as possible. Mike Matthew, I think he talked to you last week about everything that's going on there and what they've done and what our fire inspectors have done. And I just wanted to reassure you and reassure the citizens that we're doing every single thing legally possible to restrict those and to make sure that we're okay. I also want to say, Councilmember Stevens, I appreciate the comment about accountability, trust, and transparency. That's something that we've really wanted to work on, and I appreciate your acknowledging that. That's something that's been very important to us. The budget process is one of the most unique things we can do for the citizens here, and your commitment to that and our commitment to that transparency, trust, and it really matters to us. And so thank you for acknowledging that. And we will double down on our commitment to do that. And so we thank you, and we thank you for what we've done. This last year has been impossibly difficult for everybody. I mean, I think we dropped 30% in our budget after we had it set up and gone through our budget hearings and everything else, and then had to reconsider everything in the last year and a half. And so our finance team's gone, their managers here, but they've done a phenomenal job in looking at where our sales tax revenues are, what's going on, and how we approach everything. And it's not just the budget, it's the supply chain. How do we get enough brake pads for our trucks and our fleet and everything else? I bought a truck 2 months ago, and it didn't have an air conditioning hose on it. And I drove it 4 days in 2 months, and I'm driving a rental right now because they have no supply chain for that. But our fleet and divisions facility has done a phenomenal job of forecasting that and making sure that we're able to do all of the city services that are required and needed. And I think a lot of you saw that we were on the Milkins Institute as one of the top 10 best performing cities in the United States. And that's because of really good department directors and managers and everyone else. And I'm really proud of that. And so to get to this point with the budget and everything else that we've done, I think is amazing. And I really appreciate your diligence in looking at it all, asking hard questions, and holding us accountable as we go through it. So thank you all very much for it.
Thanks. Council members?
I'll take a few minutes.
Start the
I've got 3 minutes. 2020 was a unique year. 2021 is a unique year. I hope 2022 is a non-unique year. We've had too many of these situations, but we're able to withstand the challenges that are presented before us. And that's not only because of the council staff, administration, but also our citizens. We have to take our hats off to the citizens because they are able to adjust and do those things that are necessary and make the sacrifices where needs be. I don't know if it comes from those moving into the area, but also we may say it could be the pioneer spirit that we have, the attitude that we have in the state of Utah. Janine did a great job in presenting the budget, and she illustrated several things. Number one, the budget is the primary policy document of the city. That is the main purpose that we have as elected officials, to provide that document for the city. It gives direction, it adds funding, it is a control tool by which the city can control and operate in, and it's a management tool. Every other year we'll have an opportunity as a council to look at a property tax. Well, I won't look at that next year. It's up to you guys to maybe look at that. But the idea of the budget is to make it as transparent as possible and to bring in those revenues so that we can operate. Ogden is a great place to live, work, and play. And we hear that all the time. But the reason that is because of all of our citizens pulling together to make it that way. There are events coming up since I declared I wasn't going to run for re-election that are going to be last. And this budget is that one. This is the last budget that I'll ever sit through. And as I mentioned, it was just like the New Year's Eve. It's just like when you're a senior in high school and you're walking across the stage and you have your diploma in hand and saying, gosh, I made it. And then all of a sudden they say, well, you need to look at college or other educations. And then you say, well, maybe I need to go on further. So I don't know what the future will bring, but I'm going to enjoy it 100%.
Is that your announcement for running for Congress?
No, not this time.
I'll jump in. I'll turn my microphone on too. I appreciate this time of year every year when we finally do pass a budget. It is something that requires a lot of mental energy, a lot of focus. Particularly for me, I'm more of a right brain guy. So the numbers thing is a little bit of a challenge. I rely on people that really understand that a lot better than I do. But I never cease to be amazed that the most important meeting of the year for what happens in Ogden City is largely vacant in the chambers here. And we don't have, looks like we got about 6 online. I do appreciate what Doug said, but I hope you do sit through the budget. I know you can't vote on the budget, but you can sit in and weigh in, as I wish all of our citizens would pay attention to. We make the best decisions when we get the most input. We just do. And so I hope that's a plea for folks to do that. Another thing, if I might just get on a soapbox about the water issues, we individually can do a lot. We've got to, those of us who are listening and within the sound of my voice, we've got to spread the word. As we heard in some of these comments, there are a lot of people that seem to feel like they're immune from this, and we've got to, and I don't like shaming per se, but we do need to influence as best we can, to encourage people to turn the water down. In my home, my wife and we have perfected the sailor shower, and we make sure that we only run our dishwasher when it's full. We don't pre-wash or pre-rinse the dishes. So there's just things people can do. And I hope we all do that. Outside watering is the most effective at reducing. And so we got to turn down that sprinkler timer, and we got to not wash off the driveway and all the things that we're kind of used to doing. We got to just quit doing stuff like that. It's okay this year to have brown lawn, and I think we need to make sure we do that, and set examples for those in our neighborhood. One of my neighbors that has always had one of those golf course lawns, he fertilizes in March and starts watering then. He hasn't. I mean, even he has done this. I've been so proud of him. I want to hold him up for an example because he's done a good job of conserving water. And anyway, that's my thing. So let's be cautious with fireworks. I would even go so far as to say, let's make sure we don't use them that go up in the air. Let's just do the stuff that's on the ground if you've got to do it at all. All right, there you go.
No, yeah, you all have said, quite a lot. I guess I would say that I just feel a little bit torn around the fireworks issue. I guess I feel like maybe we can take the restrictions a little bit farther. I know, that's a challenge figuring out the right balance. We were kind of talking in the work session about, the idea that I think a constituent proposed last week, or maybe people could just have designated areas to do personal fireworks. I mean, I like what Salt Lake City has just done in banning all personal fireworks. Just because of the dire nature of the drought and the water loss. And I really, it hit home for me last week when I heard the water situation and thinking about the water treatment plant having to close down early and how does that affect us. I mean, I don't even know if we know how that's going to affect us. If we have to use water to put out fires from fireworks, it seems like such a waste to me and a lot of risk that we're taking on too. So just my comment.
Great comments. I want to comment. I know I say this a lot, but I'm really proud of our city. I saw Councilmember Stevens at Juneteenth this weekend, and it was just really fun. It was fun to be there, fun to walk around, fun to feel like we were back in some normalcy. And I'm just proud of our city for just welcoming a lot of diversity in our city, and I just am. I couldn't be more proud of our city. So, just again, thank you for all that the city does. The events folks were out there and getting burned to a crisp because it was so darn hot, and but it just was delightful to be part of that and to be part of a bigger city when we have all of our diverse populations here. So. Yeah, with that, if there's no more comments. Don't let Councilmember Stevens. Oh, wait, I hear Councilmember Nadolski. Maybe.
Okay, Ben?
No additional comments. Just appreciate everybody's support for the discussions we had about the additional positions in engineering. I also, I'm here at the beach, and I'm with a bunch of family members, and an uncle asked me, "What's politics like?" And he said, "Well, how about the elected officials you work with? Are they good people?" And I said, universally, every single one of them is a good person. They're doing these things for the right reasons. And he was really surprised by that answer. And I said, but I don't think that's always the case or necessarily the norm. So just wanted to let you guys know that I still feel we have something special, even in points where we have disagreements, and appreciate that that you guys were supportive of some of the things that I brought up last week or week before. I think it was last week. Sorry. Also, I'm happy to hear that we're going to continue to look at the transparency in the RDA process. I think that Heath was onto something when we talk about our process for how we select a commercial broker. I think it's important that we do that fairly and transparently, and I look forward to discussing that more. So thanks, everybody. Appreciate everything you guys do.
Have a nice time, Ben. Get back safe.
Put sunscreen on, Ben.
Thanks. I have, and I will.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Councilmember Heyer, second by Councilmember Chaburka to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That's a wrap.
That would be the day. Somebody opposed to adjourn.
Thanks, guys.